Hello everyone, it's Stella from Meeple University and this is Taryn, and we are very excited today to share you one of the popular well-known mechanic, worker placement. But we are going to show you the top 10 twists that we've played in worker placement.
Yeah, I think it's a very, where you see a lot of mechanisms going these days. A lot of our classic mechanisms were really popularized in the late noughties and
Naughty?
2000s decade, and then they've been developed over time, and then new versions and variants and twists have come out. And worker placement, I think, is a real, it's a very common and a very good means of action drafting in modern
It's technically,
games.
it is action drafting. So what was the first game you all play, worker placement game that you've played? Start with Tara.
My first one was Lords of Waterdeep.
My first one was, I think it was Stone Age, thank you. What is yours? Let us know in the comments below. I mean, it's probably like way back, or maybe you just started in this beautiful, awesome hobby, board gaming, and it will be one of the new ones, which is fine, totally fine. Let us know in the comments what you have played.
And both of those, they're from that era, 2000s. They're from Agricola through till about 2013. They're both very straight up and down worker placements. The action spaces are there. You put, it's blocked, and there's one or two spaces that multiple players can go to. So that's kind of the absolute classic.
The classic, yeah. That's basically is what lots of Waterdeep and Stone Age is.
Yep.
But now there are so many, people are just so creative. I can't think of it. Well done, everyone. Well done for creating such twists.
Yep.
And this is worker placements. We might do another video for, say, deck building or deduction and so on.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that.
So we'll just say at the front, we're going to try to pick games here that really do worker placement in a unique way. Either they're the only one that does it that way, or they do something extra special. Some of the sorts of the next generation mechanisms that came out after the ones we just described have been adopted more generally. So we're not going to include those in the list. That includes things like worker placement with bumping.
Euphoria?
Yep, so Euphoria was the first one I really experienced with that. Lacerda took it to the next level with the Gallerist and the kicked out actions that came with all of that. So that we're considering part of basic worker placement now as well.
It's that common that's now part of... Fair enough.
The ability to bump or to jump in ahead of a worker or use a blocked space with a more powerful worker or more workers. So it's kind of the grande worker mechanism from Viticulture, or something like Century and New World, where you can place 3 workers. So that's kind of basic worker placement as well now, I think. Placement and retrieval. So what Raiders of the North Sea did, where you place a worker and then take a worker back and resolve them both. That's a bit more general now as well. Forges of Ravenshire, for example, is one that's...
Is it Coldwater Crown as well? What was that?
Coldwater Crown did that as well. That was actually the first one we encountered, I think.
Yeah.
I forget whether it came before or after Raiders of the North Sea, but they were around the same time for us.
I do like that, either workers or dice or whatever it is that they use these days.
Yep. So, and then having sort of different workers to do different actions as well. Anachrony, I think, was one of the first ones that used that to a really large extent. Maybe not the first one, there were probably others, but that was the first one I encountered. So they're not in our top 10. They're not quite crazy enough.
Yeah, and this is the crazy, not that crazy, but just a couple of notches crazier. Now, these are the games that we have played. Of course, there might be other games that we haven't played that might needed to be included in this list. And if that's the case, please do let us know in the comments. We would love to see your comments, and even every single like it, every single view, subscribe to us if you like. It's always optional. That would really, really helpful to us. Say hello and let us know that you're there. I would really love to see your comments like that. All right, let's start with the first one.
So the first one, it's a rather simple mechanism, but I think what makes it unique is the way it links with the cooperative nature of the game. Because the worker placement, the Euro-style worker placement, has never been that conducive to the cooperative genre. I think action point allowance has always tended to be a better engine for those. But for me, the one at number 10 is Viticulture World. And I think it did in a really clever way how you upgrade your workers. So in that game, there's summer and winter actions, and you start with summer and winter workers, and they're wearing hats, a summer hat and a winter hat. And as you go through the game, you can upgrade a worker to remove its hat, which allows it to take both summer and winter actions, and it then can also occupy more powerful spaces and get more bonuses. So it ends up with this really tight mechanism for upgrading the quality of your workers and driving your game.
Towards the end especially, because it's getting tighter and a particular spot tends to be more popular than the other ones, you know, different ones from the beginning of the game to the later of the game, the grande worker as well.
Yeah, it kind of ends up in this way where by upgrading the workers, it becomes less competitive with yourself. It kind of does something that would normally work in a competitive way, but into a cooperative way. So I think, it feels like a small one, but it really clicks really well with the game.
So, in summary, we call this first twist is
competitive, cooperative, hat removing meeple upgrade.
Hat removing, that's very specific.
No,
Surely that's going to be it.
These are all very specific. Cooperative worker upgrading.
So that's it. Let it be called cooperative worker upgrading for twist number 1. By the way, if we mention any mechanics that you are not familiar with, please do let us know. I'll also try to remember to put it in the video description for the mechanic explanation on BGG. Hopefully that helps.
Yes.
On to number 2. All right, the second one, which is number 9, and this is ranked by our favorites, is
Lorenzo il Magnifico. So this is it's a very popular game, and it was one of the earlier twists that I think I saw, and what it has is each player has a worker corresponding to
the different colors of
black,
dice.
white, and orange, I think it is. It's 3 different colors, and those dice are rolled at the start of the round, and that represents the base value of that worker for all players. And there are you can spend an orange worker to get this card or this card or this one, and or do various different actions that require more power, and then you have to spend up to that power. And I think why this is such a clever mechanism is that by giving everyone the same abilities and having them so variable, it creates these rounds where it's obviously really tough for everyone in one round to do something, or certain things become easier. And so everyone goes through this feast and famine peaks and troughs at the same time.
So I do find it very interesting. It is where you actually have one different part of the board corresponding different workers, and those actions are also depend one of the area is more towards endgame scoring, the other one's probably towards engine build, so increasing the flexibility of you assigning workers to a specific place, especially mitigating the role of a low dice, for example. I do really enjoy that game.
But yeah, there's so many out there where there's a lot of dice worker placement games out there. Sometimes if you just get low rolls, you have to suffer with them. Sometimes there are ways of mitigating them, or they balance. But in this one, because everyone's sharing the numbers, I can't think of any other obvious games like that. So yeah, I think it's really clever.
Except if you have that mitigation, that upgrade cards that mitigate things like that, then that is a good game for people like me who think that I always roll that dice roll. And we call this mechanic
variable value workers. Shared variable value workers.
That'll do.
Variable shared value.
Make up your mind.
Variable shared value workers.
Variable variable shared value workers it is then.
At number 8 is 1906 San Francisco.
Smallish box game.
Yes. And this is probably, maybe I'm a little biased on this one because the twist that's in there is one of my favorite mechanisms.
Yes, I've seen that before, that you prefer that sort of action determining turn order.
Yes. So it's kind of the king domino mechanism or the mini rails mechanism where you're choosing your action, but you're also choosing your position in the next round's turn order. 1906 San Francisco does this to the absolute most extreme that I've seen because it has, in each round, there'll be 6 sub-rounds of worker placement. In each card, there's 4 actions you can choose from. They're laid out in a randomized order each round that you can see. And the actions are kind of tight. So sometimes you will really need a specific action and you really need to take steps in the earlier cards to make sure you're in the right position in turn order to get the things that are important to you. And I think you can also forego an action to jump into a spot in the turn order as well. So it takes that mechanism, which has always been a really tense one for me and always one I really liked, and amps it up to the extreme. That's why I say maybe I'm biased, maybe because it's part of a mechanism I've seen in other games that shouldn't be in here, but I think it really does it in a very extreme way.
No, I think it's really, like, in general, it is actually a really good game. Like, do you want to go to a spot, worker placement spot that is really good, but then you will miss all the actions behind it, and you think that you're going to go first next. It might be a weak action this round, and then you do that so that you have a more powerful action next time, or just do the other way around. It's a really awesome game, and hence we will be calling this mechanics is
simultaneous turn order and action drafting.
There you go.
By worker placement. It needs a snappier name.
Yes.
Anytime someone asks me my favorite mechanism, that's what it is, and it's a mouthful.
Number 7, Lucky 7. Everyone's lucky.
And this is one that you, a game that you really enjoy.
Yes.
Crystal Palace. It's a game that came out a few years ago.
Essenspiel?
Yeah.
Probably 2019 Essenspiel. That was the one I went to before
COVID.
Yes.
So this is a dice worker placement game. You don't roll the dice, you choose the value of your dice.
Behind a screen.
Behind a screen, and you have to pay for the value of your dice. And the value of your dice determines the turn order as well. You know, there's elements of this that you see in other games. Anachrony, for example, you've got to work out how many workers you're going to send out in their exosuits. But this one, again, it takes it to a real extreme because you're paying valuable money to determine number of workers, what the values are, and your turn order all at once. And again, the actions that you're spending those on, some of them are very important actions.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You
some
do
of
want
them
to
are high
pay.
value actions, and you really need to. Sometimes you have to dip deep to pay for those.
And sometimes it's quite obvious what you need to do, so you have to really dig deep, and having some money tucked away for rainy days like this is very important. That game, very nice game. I like the theme as well. It's like the world inventions. You showcase the inventions. Like World Fair.
Yeah, it was the original World's Fair, I think.
Yeah.
World Expo.
So what would you call this mechanic?
Pre-placement worker and turn order power bid. All of these are unique.
It is.
They get to be called the Crystal Palace mechanism.
No, it's just not. It's not describing it. Okay, I'll ask the audience if you have any better name for this mechanic. Please let us know. So what was that called again?
It's turn order and worker value pre-placement bid.
Okay, that's it. All right, good
Tax
enough
for nothing.
for now. Number 6, we have Mombasa / Sky Mines, the re-theme of Mombasa.
Yes, so this was Alexander Pfister's original release. It was a game that mixed worker placement and card play. So you pre-plan a set of cards which have various resources and abilities on them, and then during the worker placement turns, you can either do a worker placement or you can spend your cards. But where it gets really tense, particularly at higher player counts, is that certain worker placement spaces are only open to you based on your unplayed cards. So where these actions are really tight and where you really want to work out your sequence,
Your
it's a big timing challenge.
Yeah. Very, very good game there. I mean, they both are probably 99% the same. There's a variant for Sky Mines, and I think it's the theme that is more kind of like acceptable in the modern board gaming. And it's kind of like medium to heavy game. It's a very good game. If you haven't played it, one of those two, please do play it if you like Euro crunchy game, for sure.
I mean, I guess what distinguishes it is the timing. It's like got a double timing thing. You know, normally with your Agricola, you have to work out what do I want now, and I hope no one else gets it later. With this one, it's what do I want now, and do I spend the cards to get that now, because then that action may not even be available later. Or someone else may make an action available to me because now I've got the most of that resource. So it's, I guess it's a conditional worker placement with...
Is this what you call it?
Yeah, the worker placement is conditional based on your cards and changeable through the round.
Conditional and interchangeable worker placement?
Yes.
That'll do.
Let's do that.
And sitting at number 5 is Jiangnan Life of Gentry.
I suppose this is one of the first examples of a game in this list where it's really focused on the worker placement twist and not the game. And we'll see a few of these coming up.
It's very twisty, this one.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think the workers that you're using the actions you're using your workers to choose are pretty generic Euro actions here. They didn't feel that exciting. But what this game does is it introduces a changing light area control to the worker placement. That's also not unique. It's not unusual, I think, to see games where you're picking an action and then where the worker is could dictate something at the end of the round. Bamboo is a recent one like that, for example. You pick a certain color and you go there and then you do its actions, and at the end of the round you get a bonus if you've got the most in that area, and it's a little bonus. But what this does, it takes it to a real extreme. So that was a big intro. There's 6 actions and there's 6 boats below the board. And when you take an action, that allows you to put one of your tokens in that boat. And the 6 boats then move and a new one gets added. And basically all the points are based on those boats. There's a lot of different ways to score points. They combo with different sorts of actions, but they're all kind of worth nothing unless a boat makes it worth something. So this becomes so critical to the game.
You determine what actually will score each round, because it will then the first round objective will score the second round and the third one and so on.
Yeah.
So it's very critical, the first one, so it will actually score multiple round. And the way it is, it's very twisty, and you just to do with how you place your worker, where is this the action that you actually want to do, or you just want to get on the boat.
Yeah. Yeah, with the boats in the first half of the game, or the boats that will leave the board during the game, I think they each have several scoring objectives on them, and whoever has the area control chooses which ones score for everyone. The boats that come into play are then individual targets. Whoever has the control on those boats is the only one to score that. It's all the scoring, and that's what makes it so
unique.
It's what makes
Tasty.
it unique, and what makes it such a clever mechanism is that you don't know what's going to be worth points. You know, the strategy, you can't play the game over and over, and one strategy is obviously worth more points once everyone breaks it, because
you don't know what's going to score.
It's all based on the worker placement.
Yeah, and if we do have other videos about the games that we talked about, I will also link it in the description below. There you go. So what would you call this mechanic, Tarrant?
An extreme version of simultaneous worker placement and area control.
Is that a shorter version?
No.
Okay, say it again then.
An extreme version of simultaneous worker placement and area control.
Correct. So I was wondering if you're going to say the wrong, like one word is different the second time around. Anyways, that's all good.
Think so little of me.
No, and that is it. Sitting on number 4, we have read out posts.
So this is another one that takes, some of the things we've just seen before to
Really twisty again.
to a more extreme level.
Yeah.
This is different workers do different things, but it's all shared workers.
Yeah. Oh, the actual theme is
Communist
which is very
settlement on Mars or the moon or somewhere.
so it's a
in
shared
space.
workers.
So there's 6 workers. There's a coal miner. If you send him to the coal mine, he makes more coal for the community than any of the other workers. The other workers get, sad if they go to the coal mine. There's a fisher who's better at fishing, and there's all various sorts of actions that some workers are better at than others. And the game, a lot of the resources that are generated are shared. So there's a big element of the game which is about timing. And it also has, it's actually relatively similar to Jiangnan in that it has a worker placement. It has an area control element, but this time it's based on which worker you used. So if you use a worker, you get influence with that worker, and that's going to score you points. So now you've got this area control not based on where you put the worker, but based on which worker you use. There's 6 workers, 12 action spaces, and they're all single use as well. So they're constantly moving around and ones are going to be blocked. So it's just, I don't know if I can give this one a name necessarily, but I've never seen a worker placement type of game put together in that way. It's really clever.
Maybe you could start with communal worker placement, something.
Communal worker placement with area control and special powered workers. Like there are certain spaces where different workers will do different things as well. And sometimes you just need to block something so another player doesn't use because it's better for another player to use that way. Lots of different...
Lots of different things. So asymmetric communal worker placement.
With area influence.
With area influence. There you go. I like it. Let's make it like that.
Yes.
We're getting close. Number 3 is Architects of the West Kingdom.
Yeah, that's probably a bit weird to see that in this list. It's kind of a very mainstream game, very well known. But what it does with worker placement, I don't think it often gets the credit it deserves for how clever and revolutionary it is.
Everyone likes it, I think. Everyone that we play it, maybe except one person. But that one person probably doesn't really like a lot of game.
Yeah. Anywho, so I mean, really, what's clever about this? So everyone's got 20 workers. I mean, anyway, having that many workers for worker placement purposes, usually only placing once per round, that in its own right is kind of unheard of. But then it's the mechanism for getting them back. As you put more workers in the same place, you get stronger in that area. Players can take an action to capture your workers to stop you from having that benefit, and they get their own benefit for it. And then you can release your own workers from the players who've captured them, and that's how you cycle them back into your collection. And then some of them are getting permanently spent to do the scoring, the point scoring things as well. So this flow of workers that kind of self-regulates.
Yeah, lots of workers as well. And you place more than one worker per space.
Yeah, I mean, you think of a lot of the placement spaces are non-competitive, so it's a bit like that Euphoria type of thing where you can always kind of go where you want and you can bump people out or go next to them. But the fact that it self-regulates how you get those workers back.
When you say self-regulate, it's not automatically done, but...
I mean, it kind of is. It self-regulates. Someone gets too strong on an action, so they have to be stopped.
Yeah.
And you get a benefit for stopping it. So it means people aren't going to just continually build up their own powers that much. Or if everyone does, then everyone's going to do it at the same pace.
If you haven't played Architects of the West Kingdom, please do play it. I mean, all of this game, I should say, but this is a well-known game that Garfield Games is just very good at designing games. Anyway, that's Shem.
Yeah.
And yeah, please do play it. Architects is a really unique one, and it's a quick in between turns, like placing worker. Okay, somebody needs to stop. It's good at almost pretty much all player counts, probably, for this one as well.
Oh, I have to come up with a name for this one now. All right, it's...
I don't have to say it. Taryn's like, I just need to look at Taryn, and he knows I'm going to ask that.
Self-regulating high volume continuous worker placement.
Say it again, please.
Self-regulating high volume continuous worker placement.
Thank you.
With individual action space engine building.
I would think if somebody can come up with a shorter name for all this mechanic, then I would be definitely be grateful. Number 2 is Taji. Taji, the 2-player game.
Yes, this is a. So I guess you step back. The first thing with 2-player games is that conventional worker placement. I guess it works best with more players because the fear of losing the action that you want in a Agricola style of worker placement is not as high. So 2-player games always kind of have to come up with their own
Mechanic-ish, yeah.
And Taji, I think it's always been one of the most clever. You got a 3x3 grid. Each player has 3 workers, and your worker placement spots are at the tops of rows and columns, or at the ends of rows and columns.
So another one's in like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're competitively placed, and then by the time you've got 3 down there, unless you've put them in a silly way, you will have, you look at where the lines intersect, and you'll have 2 action spaces or 2 cards on the board where the columns and rows you've selected intersect, and then those are your actions. It's really simple and extremely clever. And because you're placing one after the other, it allows you to sort of hedge and see what your opponent is going for and block them off.
I agree. It is super clever, super good. I think a lot of you, I would imagine, would have played Taji or the expansion. It's really good. And somebody was going to the watering hole and then die. Nah, never mind. This is like really...
That's just me playing with my meeples.
Taryn, it is so mean. Somebody, according to Taryn, somebody's about to get to the water hole, but then couldn't make it, and then that's it.
I always thought the meeples looked really solemn in the game, so I had them like pallbearing for each other, but that's got nothing to do with it.
That is very, very unique mechanic. I mean, what would you call that one then? It's going to be really hard, this one.
I mean, I guess it's a worker placement on a grid. It's kind of like let's call it 2-dimensional worker placement.
You're so proud of it. I like it. 2-dimensional worker placement is Taji.
Yes. And I think for me with Taji, and I've said it in many videos, Taji is a game for me which characterizes a game with an excellent, really interesting selection mechanic, but otherwise a pretty dull game. And you'll often hear me describe things. I will sometimes describe things as a Taji style of game. I think once you get past that really clever worker placement and selection mechanism, it's kind of just a set collection game. And it disappoints me sometimes that something that is really clever at the top then kind of doesn't have the payoff.
I think it's okay. It's not like it's not dull or anything like that. It's okay considering that you have to focus on that. So this bit, if it's also very too much, it would be too much otherwise maybe.
Yeah, but I mean ultimately that's why we're doing this list in this way. We're looking at what are the twists and what are those great twists. So certainly from a list of twists standpoint, number 2.
And last but not least, number 1.
Number 1 is another 2-player game. Everything I just said about Taji applies. When you've got a 2-player game, you have to really innovate on the action selection sometimes. And the game that I think really does it in a clever way is 1987 Channel Tunnel. This is by the same group that did 1906
San Francisco.
Same sort of small box game. And in this game, your workers are stacks of discs. So there is a bag of 25 discs, 5 each in 5 colours. And at the start of each round, you randomly get 10. And you stack them up with matching colour. Essentially, that stack and its height represents the worker. So if I've got 1 orange disc, I've got essentially a level 1 orange worker. If I've got 3 yellow discs, it's a level 3 yellow worker. And then there are action spaces out on the board. And when you place a worker, you have to place a worker that is larger than the one that's already there. That's a very typical sort of thing. And then you get to take the other player's worker, or not necessarily the other player, you get to take the worker discs that were there back into your collection and stack them on top of any of the same color. So as you go through a round, everyone starts with these random discs, but they start to bring back discs of similar colors and get larger workers in that way. As you get larger workers, you also get fewer workers, so you need to balance that out. And when you think of a two-player game and the tug of war and the push and pull of doing that, wanting maybe to keep making sure you get your workers out before there's no longer a space low value enough to place them, versus recognizing that the other player could take those back and turn them into a 5 stack. There's all this interplay going on, and I think it works really cleverly.
Very clever, very strategic. And that was probably a lot of people's favorite when it first came out. It was designed by these two couple I think they designed Red Cathedral as well. These guys, they're really great. Like every game is different. It's just unique mechanic. And this particular one, back to our topic, is so clever.
Yeah.
I just love that.
I think it's a little bit of a Ataji type of game as well. I didn't find the actions I was selecting as tight or interesting, but I really liked the way I was choosing the actions, and I would love to see that. I'd love to see a different set of actions that I was choosing with that as well. But yeah, really, really clever.
And what do you call this one, Terrence?
The channel tunnel mechanism. I know it's a variable worker value with tug of war, and I don't know. I guess we could call it superior worker bumping and level up with shared worker colors.
That'll do. That is all. That is all the 10 list. Is there anything that you want us to include in the list as well? Maybe a different mechanic, a different twist? Or is there any other mechanic, like I said earlier, deck building or something else that you would like us to discuss? Please let us know. And that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Do something fun and see you next time.